want to start with that live stream. Congratulations, guys. Like, really, one of the most incredible things I've as you might imagine, I've watched a lot of live streams this last year. That really was a whole nother level. So well deserved, all the praise. Loads I want to ask you about it. Before I do, just generally, how are you kind of reflecting on it after a few weeks? I mean, you must be delighted with the fan reception to it.
Yeah. Josh?
I think, it was a lot of work leading up to it, and kind of just like, I think in those few days too, it was kind of just like a whirlwind of just kind of making sure that every piece fit together perfectly and everybody was prepared. I think there were more people involved than, a normal show, some dancers, a couple extra singers, musicians. So there were obviously a lot of moving parts, and then the very next morning we flew to LA and had another week of other stuff. So maybe I'm just now starting to process the live stream.
I remember thinking, oh yeah, we released a record.
Yeah,
because
it feels like that was,
there was so much focus on preparing for this live stream and everything that went into it. It's like we didn't even, the idea that we were releasing a record almost, didn't have the bandwidth to fully understand that we had also released a record, because we put everything we had into that stream. So
some of the differences, we already mentioned there, extra musicians playing live with you. What was it like building that band? I want to give a particular shout out to Sky, actually, because I love seeing the dynamic between you and him. Josh was particularly cool. Obviously, we've interviewed Sky many times over the years for his other work. It was really nice to see him pop up there. Just a little bit about putting together that band and I guess reworking songs in a way to have that fuller effect.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that for that stream specifically, and for a few things that were coming up, we wanted to feel backed by that instrumentation. We've always kind of tracked stuff. I mean, we haven't been shy about that. But to really put a body and energy behind those parts rather than just relying on a backing track felt right. I think Josh and I have talked about this a lot. Like, we've proven we can do this. The two of us, we did it. We showed what we're capable of as a two-piece, and we will always be a two-piece band in the truest sense. But it's the idea of bringing in extra players to help fill that sound out. Sky is he's the bassist. I just kind of followed him on Instagram, and he posts some awesome clips of him playing, and just reached out, and it seemed to work great. And he mentioned Dan, the guy on the guitar, was a friend of his at first, so we met him through Sky. And Todd on some keys and guitar. He was playing in the band Mute Meth. We met him through that, and then Jesse Bloom on trumpet and extra keys. I mean, he's in a band called Mr. Wives that we've toured with. I mean, these are just guys that it really watching them all together, not just playing music, but just kind of interacting. It was like, wow, we kind of randomly stumbled on a great group of guys here.
I mean, it's interesting you talk about referencing some of your older work in there, because I guess Choker being a particularly good example. I know I've heard you guys say in interviews as well, that almost harkens back to Vessel in a way, I guess musically, but also, like you say, wrapping up more serious topics, but with a much brighter sound behind it. And again, that piano propping up through there. Tyler, I mean, I've seen you say in a few places that, that felt like working on Vessel again on that particular song. What is it about that track that felt the same to you, or in similar territory to that era of the band?
It was so easy. And I think it's because I think that it's almost like writing a song is you're at one end of some property, and you got to cut through the woods to get to the other end. And every time you do it, you feel this pressure to like take a different route, to, maybe climb over, this creek here and, you know, go under this fallen tree here. And oh, that was a different route, but I got through the woods and now I'm in the field. Like that's where I was trying to get to. And then, all right, let's write another song. Let's start here. And then let's just kind of like head to the right. And, you know, and then it's a brand new series of obstacles. The song Choker, it was a path that I had taken several times already. You know, I'd almost like didn't even have to think about it. It had been done, but in a sense that without it seeming like a negative thing. I think as a songwriter, you always, you know, you can feel the pull towards habits. You know, you have an arsenal of tools that are available to you. And so what you're doing is you're constantly trying to pick a different combination of those tools and trying to push against that pull towards habit. And so then you find a new path and you do it in a new way, in a different way. For Choker, I didn't fight it. I leaned into it. And I realized I learned a very important lesson that just because it's the same path, just because it seemed familiar and it was easy, there was enough time between the last time I had taken that path that there were things different about it. You know, like it had overgrown in certain areas, or it had, you know, water had eroded certain areas where it was, you know, as time goes on, things change. And so even though I was taking a familiar path, I was a different person. You know, I was in a different space. And so that's kind of why I relate Choker to writing Vessel. It was the right amount of time in between the last time I had gone down that path. And that's why it was equal parts easy to write, familiar, but also still new in a sense because of the time. The song "The Outside," it really is, you know, wrestling with the idea of time and how inevitably there's a shelf life to any, whether it's career or your creativity or whatever it is that I was focusing on at the time, is this idea that it is inevitably going to come to an end. So how do you wrestle with that? And I think that I was trying to come to grips with the idea of graduating into a class of bands that have had enough behind them that moving forward was, I don't know, there's just a different graduating class. Like I don't know who else is in that class with us, but it felt like we were, you know, graduating to a new grade, if you will, or whatever. And then, you know, you're asking, how did the pandemic kind of bring a new light to a song that was currently being written? I would say that feeling of graduating to the next phase was, I guess, exaggerated, because now it really does feel like it's going to be the bands and artists pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Like there was this thing that was thrust in that really is dividing it. And I think it really put us on a fast track to being a band that was post-pandemic. That put us on a fast track to being a band that from then, which is okay. And there's something amazing about it and having that history. But with an event like that, when you press pause for a whole year, how can that not be? How can our culture and our world not view it as that now? And so equal parts, we were, I guess not, we didn't want to stop, you know, we didn't want to press pause on our touring. We wanted to keep on going, but we were forced to stop. But at the same time, how lucky were we to get in what we had gotten in? There's, you know, all of the shows that we had done and all of the touring that we were able to do, and really connect with our fans. I mean, that's we really were fortunate. All that to say that the song The Outside really, coming to grips with time and graduating and moving forward. And I realized that when things pick up again, there will be two different types of acts. There will be acts that are like, you got to go see them. It's a brand new thing. And then there's acts like, oh, this was just like before the pandemic, and almost this very nostalgic, reminiscent, exciting familiarity. And inevitably we're going to fall into that latter category. But it is interesting that the pandemic itself has kind of moved those, as where like grades, 11th and 12th grade are right next to each other. Now all of a sudden I feel like we moved from middle school to high school. Like it's a bigger jump. It's a new building. I don't know how else to describe it. I've exhausted the metaphor, but that's kind of what it feels like.
It's an apt one though, because I think you're right. I think there's something to be said of that being a very nice, in the way that we've all sought out comfort, whether it's through watching the same TV shows, same movies, and listening to our favorite bands, whatever that is. There is something to be said for the fact that when shows come back, people will want to go and see their favorite bands. I think it's quite interesting that you say that you will inevitably fall into that latter category though, because clearly, as we've seen with not only this record, but the show that before that, and even how your tours evolve and change all the way through it, like you're challenging yourself. Do you really think it would be automatically falling into that comfort space rather than challenging and doing something new?
Well, this is when I need Josh to even me out.
That's when we get the balance.
And these are the things we talk about this stuff all the time, and I'm always like, I don't know. It's hard. Sometimes I really lose sight of what's really going on and kind of see the worst in a lot of stuff. And not that Josh.
You have a brand new album called Scaled and Icy. It's out now. It's brand new. It's post-pandemic.
My sweatshirt says nothing on it because I'm all about darkness.
Guys, I'll kind of start to wrap up by really looking into the future. Like you say, you're working on new music. We know that. I know you've also said that you see this next record, whatever shape it takes, being some kind of conclusion to the story you've been building and the narrative and the world you've been building, some kind of conclusion there at the end of this one with one more record. I guess my question is there a pressure to wrap that up neatly in a bow, or are you feeling more open-ended about it? I mean, I guess it's like any TV show, any film, anything narrative, some part of your head goes, oh, it'd be nice if everything's dealt with nice and neatly, but the themes you're talking about don't work that way to me. So it's like, are you feeling more open about it, or is there a wrapping up type plan going on with you now?
I'll say this: any show that has a finale that people are less than satisfied, I've always argued with them. Like, yeah, no, it was perfect. Is exactly what it needed. Like, there's something to be said, and I understand there's certain. I think that maybe not all shows, but if it's coming from the same place, you can't like, it's perfect. If it's coming from if the whole time, the whole story, the whole journey has come from the same source, the way that source decides to end that journey is perfect. Now, when you start bringing other people and other sources into the creative process, into the storytelling process, that's when you can get critical. Like, if they hadn't brought that person on, if they hadn't, changed this about the lineup, or changed this about the creative mind behind it, it's all coming from us. And so that's one of the things that I feel confident about, is whatever we decide to do, however we decide to tell the story, at least our fans will know it's coming from us, and it has come from us this whole time. And at least that's something to stand on. And I think maybe I'm just kind of like pumping myself up that, like, we're about to figure out how this ends and in what way it ends. And it's a daunting task. But I want to remind ourselves of that at least the fan that understands that no one has come in and been a new source of inspiration, a different voice in the creative process and the storytelling. It's been the same. It's been from the same two minds this whole time. I think our real fans will notice that and recognize that and appreciate that for being pretty rare. And
Yeah,
that's my speech.
Like a song you wrote, it's never heard. When I get